talk about the 14 killer tips. And so when we started to get this together, now there's a downside to this slide that you're getting ready to see here. When we started, Jim and I and teams were starting to get together to put together our content, we really felt like it was like peanut butter and chocolate. Now the reason why that's kind of a downside, here we are right after, you know, Halloween, and if you guys have kids like I have kids, they're all jacked up on sugar. And, you know, really, if you look at AP and AR automation, they do work hand in hand. They do work together. So just kind of a quick introduction of who I am and why I'm talking, and I'm going to kind of, you know, do the first, say, 20, 25 minutes of this to give you some AP insights. I write books. That's right. I'm a lot of fun at parties. I'm very exciting because you know, when people find out that I've been published and I've written 8 books, mostly on accounts payable automation. That's right. How exciting can that be? They find out that I'm published, and they say, oh, "That's fantastic. What do you write about?" And I tell them, and then that's it. That's the end of it. But fortunately for the group that's assembled today, we got a nice sized group. The great thing about it is that you know, the stuff that I write about and the stuff that resonates with folks and the experience, I've been doing this since 2000. All of that kind of combined, what I'm hoping that you're going to see is, I really hope that you get 1 or 2, you know, it'd be nice to say all 14 tips would somehow pertain to you, but usually what I find out is that if I can give somebody 1 to 2 to possibly 3 tips that they can take away from an educational event like this, you know, that's time well served. So I hope that's kind of my goal, just kind of crafted it out, giving you a high-level agenda. And so let's just go ahead and get started right into the material with tip number 1. And tip number 1 is, you know, to help you close out 2014, the first tip is to organize and establish a calendar. Now, what I did is, if you look at the overall calendar, you see there's, you know, 6 or 7 different spots on here. But as I focus into it, you can see one of the first things is, you know, to review the vacation schedule. And, you know, based on experience, I got to tell you, even though I'm on the webinar and, you know, I've presented myself as an AP expert, and I've been involved with accounts payable for years now, I got to tell you, I learned this one the hard way. You know, and that is when you're looking at staff and you're looking at responsibilities, and all of a sudden somebody's, you know, taking a week or 2 weeks off or a week and a half off near the end of the year. Fortunately, with accounting folks, we kind of know that that's an unspoken rule. But, you know, the first thing is to kind of review the vacations, you know, to get the overall calendar, and then to kind of plot out everything else that needs to be done within that week, you know, so you can set yourself up for a really good close experience, you know, where on the 31st you can actually, you know, close out the year and, you know, be ready for the next year. So that's the first tip, is to kind of create a calendar and put everything on the calendar. By the way, at the end of this, we're going to, for those of you that are just kind of listening, we're going to, we have a, we'll let you know how you can get this material, so it'll explain it in much more detail. Our goal for the webinar today is just to kind of give you the high level. So the first tip is to create the calendar, make sure everything is on the calendar. And tip number 2, related to that, is to make sure that you have the appropriate teams together. And again, trial and error, mostly error. You know, when there are certain teams that are out and certain folks that are unavailable and certain groups that are unaware, it always makes for a much more difficult close. So our second tip is to make sure that you've divided and conquered, and you've given your the appropriate folks that you have dependencies on, or they have dependencies on you, to create an effective close, so that they're actually available and that they're going to be around. So calendar, put out the calendar, make sure that all of the everything is been mapped out appropriately, dates and times have been put to everything. And then once you've done that, it's a pretty easy and natural step to move to the second one, which is to make sure that the appropriate groups know what's going on, and that they know what their part in the calendar is, so they can, you know, like I said, help you, you help them, vice versa. Tip number 3, kind of unrelated but related. I got to tell you, anytime that I do any AP discussions or AP talk, it does go back to this. And there's a couple of ways of looking at this, cleaning up your master vendor file. And there's a couple of ways of looking at this. Now, hopefully, folks on the phone, maybe I shouldn't assume, because I know when we do the ERP VAR webinars, there's a wide variety of people on here. But, the idea of cleaning up your master vendor file has a lot of benefits, and I was about ready to say you all know the benefits, but just to make sure that we're all level set is that it can really help with duplicate payments, and obviously reduces fraud, and increases staff productivity. So we're the things that it does, especially around the duplicate payments, because at the end of the year we're going to have to accrue, and we're going to have to figure out where all of these are coming from. And the kind of things that we clean up, are looking for the duplicate tax IDs, and making sure that the vendor's name and address are all kind of squared up, and then that they're qualified with the government properly, and just that's the kind of cleanup that we're talking about. And so if you look at how that can affect, obviously the reason why I'm teetering is because, point number one is that it would be perfect to go into the year-end close with a fresh, cleaned up master vendor file, and that would obviously make the close a lot easier, simpler, straightforward. Again, everything that a clean master vendor file does for your department. But the challenge is that it might be one of those things that moving forward, or starting in December, or starting at the beginning of the year, you have that goal to where you can start the cleanup. And I know how cleanup is a process, and it's kind of an ongoing type of situation, but it really is one of those things that that can help your close, whether you're preparing for it now or whether it's for next year's close. So putting the map, making sure everyone is on the map. The first bit of cleanup is to take a look at the vendor master file, and then the next thing is to get organized around doing your 1099 reporting, which we know is a big deal, and it's one of those things that we all talk about during the year. We make sure that we're set and that we've got all of our ducks in a row as it pertains to executing on the 1099 reporting, so it could get out to the right folks. And I think the fifth tip is around this idea that there are certain times where when you don't need to file a corrected return. So when people push against you, and I'll just give those out, when people push against you for updated information, you don't necessarily have to send them a corrected 1099, just because they've asked. And one of the things that we're trying to present here in this tip is that, once you've done your due diligence and your 1099 reporting is straight and in the out the door, there's a couple of things that, around the fact that they're exempt, or around the fact that they've requested it, or they've re-reported their fees, that you don't have to send the 1099 reporting out. So again, if you look at this whole thing and you think about, well, doing the calendar, creating, making sure that people know in the calendar that they're ready for their 1099 reporting, that the vendor file is clean, and all of those, the thing that I wanted to kind of talk about is going into the last couple of tips is this idea that within AP, there's generally a decent amount of competition. And what I mean by that, and my picture's not reflecting this very well, except for I was pretty impressed by the lady running in the high heels. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But the thing about this is that if you look at, my experience has been, you guys can kind of tell me what your experience has been, is that a successful end of the year close versus one that's, and I hate to say unsuccessful because it's going to close no matter what, but the ones that we spend more time, overtime, weekends, things like that, which is kind of the bane of our existence when it comes to closing and accounting and making sure that everything is straight. It always goes back to this idea of productively using your time. So the next couple of tips, the first tips that I gave you were pretty, basic accounts payable tips, and I think a lot of people know about, the 1099 reporting and the vendor file cleanup and the managing time. But the next few tips that I want to give you revolve around this idea that we have things that are competing for our times at the end of the year that take away, specifically 4 things that take our attention away from, closing the books and finishing the year. And I specifically wanted to use these 4 as examples, just general year-end audits, because those happen, use tax, budgeting, and accruals especially. And I want to give you an idea that in this next tip, and that is you have the ability, when you get rid of the paper, to really take these 4 things that we've lived with all of our financial lives, and we've lived with all of our professional lives, and we have the ability to really kind of, change our environments to change the way we use our time. So let me explain this. And what you're looking at here is a typical accounts payable process where the invoice comes in, it's attached to a purchase order, coded, approved, entered in the accounting system, selected for payment, paid, and filed. And if you think about accounts payable year-end close, if you think about budgeting, if you think about accruals, which they're all connected, the thing that I wanted to direct your attention to is that if you eliminate the paper at its source, then what happens? So what you're looking at here is an automated accounts payable process. And the automation is designed to do one very simple thing, but it all relates back to the issues that we've been talking about, which is it's designed to eliminate as many manual tasks as can be eliminated without interrupting the day-to-day business lives of your people. So let me kind of explain that. If you look at the screen here, what you're looking at here, everything slashed out is taken over by AvidXchange software. So the idea, so notice that the coding and the approving and the management of the accounting system isn't slashed out because we wanted to represent that automation does really well with tasks like opening the mail or system data entry or filing. It does really well with those tasks so that because people are always concerned about this, that the software is going to start to make decisions for them, which it technically can. And I always like to kind of joke that software can't make decisions right now, which means that in the future, someday it will. But I don't know about that because here's my point. My point is that in our business lives today, we still have to make decisions, like approving, is this a valid invoice? Has the work been done? Was it done correctly? Was it done was it done up to the specifications or up to the desire that you wanted to? Software has a very difficult time of doing those kind of soft tasks, but a human being absolutely knows that knowledge. So if you look at this, just to kind of reiterate this point, and that is time, as far as the year-end close is concerned, is a premium. It's our commodity. It's the thing that we bring in to this point of our financial lives that is most precious to us. That is, where do we spend our time? How do we spend our time? And if I could just kind of make this tip, and then I'm going to show you to materialize it a little bit better, that when I use this idea of audits, use tax audit, which is the same thing. We deal a lot in real estate here at AvidXchange. So at the end of the year, there's CAM audits, which means that all invoices have to be produced, accruals and budgeting. So if you look at this and you automate the accounts payable process, what it starts to do is it puts you in a position to where, well, you can't see this, it's a small little nuance, but to the right, if everything is an electronic database, the idea is of calling up backups for audits, which invoices are against certain codes, becomes very simple. It's not a huge project because it's just a matter of going and searching in a database and calling out that information. And this idea of use tax, an invoice can be marked for use tax during the approval process because the approver knows the situation with that one particular invoice, and then that can become part of the research project process also, where you'd have the ability to call up all of the invoices that are marked for use tax. And accruals, and the one thing I love to talk about accruals, and I have an example of an accrual report, is that if you get rid of the paper from the vendor at its source, then you're technically accruing for the invoice the moment that the vendor sends it. And I know that's kind of a crazy idea, because generally we expect accrues to be done once the invoice is in the system, or you do estimated accruals or things like that. But the long and short of it is you can start accruing and managing this expense the moment that it leaves the vendor. And then lastly, the whole idea of budgeting is automated also. So if you know what your expenses are, who's approving what, when, from which vendors, and how is it coded, it makes this idea of creating budgets for the end of the year. So hopefully I've demonstrated the idea that at the end of the year, we've got to close this year out, and we've got to make sure that everything in the year is put in the year. All of the 1099 reporting is done. Of course, it helps to have a clean vendor file. But the long and short of it is, where do you want to be spending your time? That's the big question, and that is, do you want to be spending your time, doing the manual work necessary, collecting the paper, making the copies, going to the filing cabinet, or would it make sense that if you collect it in an automated way, then it's a matter of running reports and having these reports come up. So let me give you an example, because I've been talking in general terms of exactly what this looks like. And so here's when an invoice comes in, it's pulled in, and it's queued up into an approval process, which is what you're looking at right here. And so all of these invoices have associated to it the image, which shows the invoice and has the coding detail and everything like that. And when you put the invoice in its approval process, you now have the ability to search, and I'm giving you an example of a searchable interface that you can search for ranges of codes or individual codes. You can search for different locations, vendors, dates, date ranges, dollar amount ranges, or a combination of all of it. So the point here is that when it comes to reporting, and you've gotten rid of the paper, and the paper is in kind of a standard place, you now have the ability to call it up electronically. And we have an opportunity with a wide variety of reports to slice and dice this information. You can see the accrual reports on here, budget reports, and things like that. And here's what an example of the reports looks like. So this is an accrual report. So at the end of the year, you have the ability to know what all your expenses are. A use tax report would look very similar to this, what all of the use tax expenses are, what are all the budgeted expenses, what are all the expenses that you have against a particular contract. And it makes the process of closing out the year and finishing the year, I don't want to say easy, because it's never easy, but I want to say it makes the process of finishing and closing less labor intensive, so you can actually use that labor somewhere else for, say, the 1099 reporting, or the cleaning up the master vendor file, or creating that project and making sure that everyone's all on the same page. Because like I mentioned, time is the commodity, and automation, especially with AvidXchange, is that's its job, is to free up time and to make sure that the appropriate people do the right thing for the right reason. So that's a little bit about accounts payable automation. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to toss it over to my friend Jim, who's been sitting here patiently just waiting, and he's going to kind of give you a little glimpse into what it's like around the AR side. Jim?
Excellent. Well, and like you, Chris, I tend to be the AR dork at the parties, so I guess if we got together, we could hang together.
We probably would be the only two at the party.
We probably would be. There might be some GL budgeting guy there. But, hey, anyway, I want to give you a little overview on who I am. I know a number of you have been on some of my webinars in the past, so I won't spend a whole lot of time here. But a little bit of my experience, I've been doing AR credit collection software for over 7 years now. Prior to that, I actually came out of the ERP space, and I've got 17 years in business applications. And we were talking about this actually before we started the demo. I've done over 1,000 AR product demonstrations and presentations. So I've been doing it quite a while, kind of like Chris here. One of the things we don't really talk about a whole lot when we're talking about business software is kind of the personal side. So I thought maybe it'd be nice to share a little bit about kind of who I am personally here. You are looking at my family there at the top. They're not all ours. There's actually 2 of them there that are not. We have 8 of us, so we're very, very busy. And I do a lot of things. I love to do outdoor stuff, kind of an outdoor fanatic. I got roped into doing Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts with my kids, and that's a pretty good thing. You see a picture of my youngest son smashing a whipped cream pie in my face there on the right. We're always busy, baseball and Boy Scouts. And if you want to learn more about my exciting accounts receivable life, you can find me out on LinkedIn and Google+. So just a little bit about me. We'll go ahead here and walk through our AR tips. And some of these are going to be very similar to what Chris was walking through with you earlier. One of the first things that we like to recommend is you create a checklist. We created a white paper or a document, if you will. I think it's 4 or 5 pages long, pretty short. And what it does, it gives you a 28-point checklist of things that you may or may not need to do for AR year-end processing. I'm not going to go into the details of this because we're going to give you that checklist to use as a resource for your year-end planning. But I do want to mention one thing when it comes to our application, Anytime Collect. We've got a lot of features very similar to AvidXchange where we can do automation, save you a lot of time, help you get paid faster. We've got a rules engine in the background of the software, basically looks at the accounts receivable data, and it'll tell you what do you need to do, who you're going to call, what invoices are late or coming late. It can automate, past due notices, statements, automate delivery of invoices to your customers, and really free you up to focus on the things you need to focus on, and that's building relationships with your customers, managing disputes, and trying to get paid a lot faster. So that's tip number 1 is create a checklist, know what you're going to work on. Step number 9, very similar again to the AP side, as you can imagine, is creating a year-end kind of schedule, if you will. And Chris had a good point there looking at vacation schedules, but year-end, I think you also got to look at work schedules. A lot of companies, if you're a manufacturer, distributor, you may be on plant shutdown during the holidays. You need to make sure that you're actually going to have staff in the office and make sure that any of the resources you need are going to be around. It's actually one of the things that we've built into our software, since we do automate the creation of task lists for credit collections professionals, is we have a calendar. So if you're not working the week of Christmas or whatever the holidays you recognize, you can actually block that out. And if the system's created an activity for a collector and given them 3 or 5 days to perform that call or to send that email, it's going to respect your holiday calendar and create it at a time when they can feasibly make that call. Next tip on the AR side is, let's get all the money in that we can before we close out our accounts receivable for the year. You need to really start proactively calling your customers in November. I mean, most of us are offering on average net 30 terms. So, any of the invoices that we created in November, we got to be pushing real hard to get those in before the end of the year. Now, I do want to share one story with you real quick. We had a customer of ours, still a customer of ours. They're actually moving to a different ERP platform, a company called Systems Maintenance Services. And they implemented our software in 2011, toward the end of the year. And in 2012, we called them to see how everything was going, and they kind of surprised us a little bit. We knew our software was pretty good, but they said that they were able to collect almost every single penny they invoiced in 2012, and then went back and collected money from previous years that were outstanding. So they actually collected more money in 2012 with our software than they invoiced. Pretty amazing story. Most of our customers aren't getting that type of a return on investment, but most companies are seeing a reduction in their day sales outstanding of about 9 days. And that's pretty important in your cash flow. So be a little proactive. Let's get that money pulled in before year end and close out and give everybody a lot of bonuses. Next tip, let's review any of the outstanding issues we have. Anytime that we're selling to customers on credit, there's going to be a percentage of those invoices that are going to have disputes associated with them. Maybe it was a new customer. We didn't set them up properly in the system. They require a purchase order on the invoice, and we forgot. We sent them the invoice. It didn't have their purchase order on it. And by the way, that's probably 50% of all invoice disputes are regarding missing or inaccurate customer PO information being on that invoice. Something that's very easy for us to avoid. And these are just some of the things you're going to want to review, and some of the things that Anytime Collect can help you with. Review the account statements, see if customers have unapplied credits, automatically send your invoices to customers. We need to shorten that cycle up. If you're creating invoices in your system but you're not delivering them to your customers for a week, that's 1 week you're adding to your DSO, and you're extending your customers' payment terms. There's no need for that with technology. Let's get that invoice out. Let's get it in the hands of the customer and start aging that so we can get paid. Automatically send statements to customers. A lot of companies have gotten away with from this in the past. It used to be pretty common practice that we'd send statements. And a lot of companies we work with, even the smaller companies, they just say they don't have the time for it and nobody looks at the statement anyway. Honestly, it is kind of a pain in the butt, especially if you're doing it manually, but why not automate it? With our software, we could set up the system so it sends out an automated statement every single month. You don't even have to touch a button to do it. Identify and track your disputes. We talked about that. The earlier in the process you can identify a dispute, the faster you're going to be able to resolve that dispute. If you let that dispute linger, there's a good chance that people are going to change, right? Maybe somebody leaves the company. You now have a dispute you're trying to resolve that's 6 months old. The sales rep that sold the deal is gone. The person that bought the product or service from you might be gone or in a different position. It just becomes a lot more difficult to try to resolve those disputes the longer they sit out there. And the last thing here is to set up alerts and notifications within an automated system so that you can prevent things from happening. And that PO is a good example. Within our software, I can use a user-defined field to say that these customers require that there's a PO number on an invoice. What happens with Anytime Collect is we do a data sync. We pull in those invoices from your accounting system. We look at those customers that are flagged to require a PO, and if there's no PO number on it, we'll immediately create an action for the collector. They log in and they can look at their action list, and they can see that they have 5 or 6 or 10 invoices that don't have a purchase order where the customer's flagged to require a purchase order. They can then jump on those immediately and try to get some resolution. Go in, add the PO, correct the PO, send it back out to the customer so you can get that invoice paid. AR tip 12. Ensure you have data backups and print year-end reports. This is probably the same on the AP side, and we kind of all know this, but you get somebody new in accounting that maybe has never been through a year-end before, or maybe they got stuff going on at home, they're frantic, you got product launches, you got this, that, and the other thing going. Sometimes you just forget, and depending on your accounting system, it may be very unforgiving if you go and post something, you may not be able to get back what you had before. So we're big fans of making data backups often. Even though we live in a digital world, it's always a good practice to have hard copies of your year-end reports out there as well, just in case. Some of the things we do within Anytime Collect, we can synchronize those customer accounts and invoice header information to a separate database, giving you yet another data backup source. We have a document management system that's integrated, so if you want, you can add this into it. It'll create PDF copies of invoices, and those PDF copies then could be stored on a network drive, a SharePoint directory, out in a cloud somewhere, and that'll have all of your detailed backup for each of the invoices you created throughout the year. And you can create custom views of your AR data for reporting and analysis, much like Chris was showing earlier with the AP side. We've got a whole lot of data, and we can give you a lot of ways to slice and dice and get reports out of it. And the last thing here is storing supporting documents. There's a lot of cases where customers aren't going to pay us unless we provide proof that we have provided a product or service to them. If you're in a distribution industry, you might need to provide a proof of delivery document. If you're in a professional service industry, you might need to provide a timesheet that goes along with an invoice. transportation logistics. You might have a freight invoice that goes along with an invoice to your customer. You might have a bill of lading. So there's lots of different documents and supporting documents that relate to each of these invoices. This is something else that we can assist with, because we could take all these documents, relate them to the invoice, and then expose them to your customers on a secure portal, so they have no reason whatsoever not to pay you on time. AR tip number 13, review all pending transactions. And there's a lot of them you need to look at. Things like on-hold sales orders. Can you get them off hold? Can you get the order booked this year? Can you get it invoiced? Can you get it paid? Same thing with shipments. Shipments on hold because maybe they're on credit hold. Maybe you've got an issue where you're out of stock. Can you get that product in, complete the shipment, again, close out the year with a bang on the AR side? Do you have pending cash receipts? Do you have unapplied credits? Do you have prepaid deposits? There's a lot of different things out there that you really need to look at and try to get to the best financial position you can from an AR perspective before you close out the year. Some things we have within our software, we've got a lot of alerts, so you can be notified if there's an online credit card or ACH payment that has been made from one of your customers on an invoice but it hasn't been recognized or added into your ERP system. You can create reports and alerts for on-hold accounts. You can create custom activities to manage more complex accounts receivable activities. With our software, you can create all kinds of different activities. Maybe you want to manage specific types of disputes. You can create an activity just for that dispute, for analysis, reporting, and alerting. Number 14, review your year-end results and create a plan to improve the process for next year, very much like Chris was talking about earlier. We got to take a look, right? We're a metric-driven society. If you're manufacturing, you're constantly looking at lean principles to try to improve processes, drive out waste. It's really no different in the financial supply chain and your working capital management. What we're looking to do is to use technology where it's appropriate to drive out inefficiencies. In order to do that, we need to understand where are we at today. Let's draw a line in the sand at the end of the year, and let's look at how did we close out the year. What was our day sales outstanding? What were our average days beyond terms? How many invoice disputes did we have? Why did we have invoice disputes? Look at that information, figure out what's working, identify what's not working, then put together a plan so that we can resolve that and get paid a heck of a lot faster going into next year. So some of the things within our software we provide, we have alerts, keep everyone informed. We have inquiry users. You can give inquiry user licenses to anybody in your organization, customer service, somebody in returns, shipping, warehouse management, project management, you name it, sales reps. Let them log in and take a look at what's happening with their accounts. And on average, again, get paid 9 days faster. Most companies that implement our software have a DSO of in and around 60 days, on average net 30 terms, and they're getting about a 20% reduction. So right there you go. That's probably 12 days right there, if not more. Reduce bad debt write-offs. The longer an invoice sits out there in dispute or unpaid, the less likely you are to ever get paid. We have a number of studies that we've published around this. But on average, you're going to be able to reduce your bad debt write-offs by 20%. Now, let me just take a second here and put that in perspective. So let's say that you're a $10 million company, not very large, pretty good size. On average, most companies are writing off about 4% of their AR annually. Now, it may seem high to you. Some companies are a little better than others, and other industries are better than others. But it is an industry average that 4% of AR is written off the bad debt. So that's $400,000 on average the companies are writing off every single year. What if you could get a 20% reduction in that just by being more proactive in your accounts receivable, credit, and collections management? 20% of $400,000, you're looking at $80,000 savings. Pretty significant. Our software doesn't cost anywhere near that. So if you're in and around that 4% bad debt write-off, even 2%, you're going to see an ROI in about 2 months on average. You're going to be able to manage disputes and escalations, and really at the end of the day, the only reason we exist is to help you get paid faster. So just a quick summary, kind of all the areas of Anytime Collect. We can do automated email, mail merge report templates, dunning letters, collection letters, past due notices, open invoice reports, you name it. Prioritize call lists that are created automatically for the collectors with escalation built in, so that, you know, if you have an invoice that's over 30 days past due, over 10,000 past due, and get escalated to a credit manager or CFO. You got all the information centralized, so you're not going to 15 different systems, you know, 20 spreadsheets and your variety pack of highlighters to try to figure out what happened and what you need to do next. We've got statistical cash forecasting. We analyze customer payment history, and we can give you a statistical cash forecast on what kind of money you should expect over the next week up to the next 35 days. Dispute management, online customer payment. If your customers want to pay via secure portal on invoices via credit card or ACH, we can enable that. We've got all the business intelligence, so you understand exactly what's going on. Credit management, so you don't extend credit to customers or prospects that aren't credit worthy. Alerts you can set up around that. Credit scores, identify companies that maybe were pretty good customers at one time, but now they're starting to slip a little bit. So you can set up alerts and get notifications that maybe you might want to take another look at this. And last but not least is really just managing all the documents, because there's a lot of documents to go in and around the accounts receivable process. A couple screenshots here. We've got a lot of videos out on our website, so I won't bore you with the videos, but this is an example of one of the dashboards. You can see our projected cash summary at the top. You see average days late trend. You can see our DSO and our current aging, cash summary there at the bottom. We see what our alerts look like, so we can set up alerts. We can schedule which users or inquiry users in the system we want the alerts to be sent to, and we can define the schedule on when those alerts are triggered or created. So, you know, we could have a weekly alert go out to all of the sales reps, notifying them of any customer they have that has an open dispute. That way they're aware of it, and if they're going out on site to talk to that customer, they can try to resolve that issue for you. Manage your customer accounts. We provide a lot of information around the accounts. We provide a statement of accounts, all their financial information organized for credit and collections. Communication history, how many times we tried to call them, what were the results of those, were they phone calls, or were they date sensitive, did we do them on time, did we send an email, did we receive an email, did we talk to them about a specific invoice or multiple invoices, did we record an expected payment. We have lots of information about the account itself, credit information, account detail, where are they at, historical summary of the account, the contacts, and the transactions. Then there's this little handy drop down in the software. It's account info tab. You click it and you have all that information right there at your fingertips. You know, this is kind of my big soapbox is, you know what to do, know when to do it, and know why you're doing it. That's why we exist. We're providing all this in a system that's automated. So we can automatically do things for you. We can automatically queue up things that you need to do. And then, you know, you just work through your to-do list, and at the end of the day, hopefully you get it all done. Empower your customers through self-service. Let them hit a customer portal like this where they can look at the invoice details. They can look at the original PDF of that invoice. They can look at the supporting documents related to that invoice, select invoices that they want to pay, click the Pay Now button or Make a Payment button, go out to a secure portal and pay that, you know, right online. The beautiful part about this portal is they don't have to remember a URL to go to. They don't have to remember a username or password. We could send them an encrypted hyperlink. They click the link, and they're automatically logged into the portal. Our goal is to make it easy as possible for your customers to pay you on time. And this is just an example of some of those supporting documents. If you were to click on one of these invoices here in the documents folder, you know, you can have all kinds of documents that are available, either internal or external, that you expose to the customer. And then there's the Make a Payment form. Depending on how you have set it up, it will default to credit card information or ACH bank transactions. Anytime Collect 2015, simply a better way to get paid faster. At the website, we've got some videos. We'll do live demos for you. I want to share a quick little story here. We had a customer we just did a success story on, a company called MSpark, using Sage 100 ERP. They love the software. It works beautifully. It's user-friendly. It can be stored in any manner you choose. We simply couldn't be happier, and they recommend it to everybody. So if you're looking for a better way to automate AR, take a look at it. I mean, the software starts at $60 per month for QuickBooks users. Pretty cheap. A lot of people are spending more than that on a cell phone bill. On average, most of our mid-market customers are spending about $150 a month on the software. Or if they want to buy it, your total investment, turnkey implemented, a couple $1,000. And you're definitely going to get an ROI on it very quick. A couple of the resources we provide. This year-end 28-point checklist is one of the deliverables you'll be getting as a registrant and attendee. We also have a number of white papers we've written around different topics in AR management. You'll be getting those as well. And then on the AvidXchange side, they're going to be providing to you their AP best practices, the guide for year-end close. So you'll be getting that from them as well. And I think we're done. We're going to close this out. So I'm going to turn it back over to Adrian, and we're going to do a little Q&A.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Chris. Great presentation. And thank you, audience, for spending time with us today. I do have a poll I'd like to launch while we're announcing some of the questions. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So what's next for the audience? If you could just take a minute to select one of these polling questions, that would be great, or answers. And let's see. Let me take a look at the questions. So for AvidXchange, what ERP systems do you work with for your AP automation generally?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have relationships with just a little over 50. I think the number is 52. So, and then of course it runs the gamut. You can have SAP, Oracle, JD Edwards, but then the vast majority of the ERPs are more like SL Dynamics, Great Plains Dynamics, and then Jim had mentioned the Sage system. We work with all the different variations of the Sage systems down to QuickBooks, anything like that. So there's a lot of your major accounting systems that we work with. Yeah.
And then Chris, how long does it take to implement AvidXchange, and what's involved with that process?
Yeah, good question. Generally, so one of the things that we have that's in our favor is this idea that we're connected to the 52 accounting systems. So we're always looking for 53 and 54. We haven't stopped, and we have a way of onboarding new ERPs. But the thing about it is, if you're on that list and we're familiar with your accounting system, that dramatically changes how you implement. So what I mean by that is that when people think of implementing a financial system kind of like AP automation, they think, well, this is going to take up a lot of our time. Our average implementation process is about 30 days, just a little over 30 days. We even have a 45-day guarantee where our clients are given rebates for getting to the 45-day mark and being implemented. So hopefully I can kind of, it's pretty safe to say that within about 45 days you could be fully implemented and the paper can be gone in the accounts payable process.
And then Jim, how long does it take to implement Anytime Collect generally?
Generally, we can get a phase 1 implementation done in about 2 days, depending on how crazy you want to get with the automation and the rules set up. Some of the companies we work with, we're primarily mid-market products. So we're working with the Sage and the Microsoft products, Epicor, products along that line. At most, our larger implementations might take up to a week, and that's up to a week of actual time. The duration itself really depends on you and your availability. We've done implementations literally in a matter of hours, up to a couple months, depending on availability. So, you know, it really depends a lot on the number of users and kind of how complex they want the system to be.
And James, thank you for your question. Will we be able to get an audio copy and an email copy of this webinar? Yes. Haley Martin over at Avid Exchange, she's going to be preparing a follow-up email which will contain a link to the recording. And Haley will also provide a copy of the PowerPoint presentation. And Jim has a handy resource center where she will also include copies of Anytime Collect white papers on how to expedite your collection process. There's lots of helpful insight in those resource white papers that Jim has available. And there's just a couple real easy links that will be provided in that email that you'll be directed to. So I think that answers your question, James. And I'm not seeing any more questions. I'm going to go ahead and close this poll and share the results with the audience. Looks like 67% of you are interested or just learning for now. 8% are looking for more information on Anytime Collect, and 25% of you would like more information on both solutions. So we will be in touch with you via the phone, especially if you answered that last question, just to make sure we get all the information you're looking for to you. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know that an hour of your time is not easy to come by. And we just sincerely appreciate you spending this time with us. I'd like to hand it over to Chris and Jim for some closing remarks. I don't see any other questions, you two. So go ahead and I'd like to let you close out with any comments.
Yeah, Jim, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go up first. I just want to echo kind of Adrian's sentiments there. I mean, taking an hour out of your day is quite a bit, especially as we're approaching year end. Hopefully you guys got a little bit out of this today. If you have any questions about the content, feel free to contact either one of us. We'll certainly help you, gain some more insights into the presentation. But I also want to take this opportunity to thank ERP VAR for setting this up. And for Avid Exchange, this is the first joint webinar we've done with Avid Exchange. And, our applications are very, very complementary. We don't have any code conflicts. We do completely different things, but identically the same thing. It's all about automation. It's all about making things easier. And I'm just really excited to be able to bring this topic to you today. And, again, take a look at our software if you're interested. If not, then, we're always here. Just reach out to us. Be willing to answer any questions you might have.
Yep. So I shouldn't let Jim go first because he took all the easy ones. Thank you, ERP VAR. I'm just kidding. So it is a good joint effort. And I guess the last kind of closing thought is that, as we get into the end of the year and we get into closing out the end of the year, I think the idea is that when you get rid of the paper, you put it in a situation to where it's reportable, it's trackable, it's managed, it's on the web, anywhere, anytime. That I'm hoping that this time next year there's going to be a handful of us on this call that have kind of done that and would love to correspond on how that's changed the close and made the 2015 close a lot easier. Getting rid of the paper can do that. Appreciate everyone's time. Thanks.
Thank you, you two. Once again, everybody take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.